Previously on the Seventh Valkyrie, the uneasy accord between the High Commander and the Jackal rises to a boiling point, but doesn't quite explode. What does Val have to say about that? Well, we'll find out next on the Seventh Valkyrie. This was something different. The Edarin strode through the darkness towards the edge of the wharf while the Jackal watched him. It must have been a trick of the light, but with each step, the Edarin seemed to grow taller, until he walked firmly with his head held high. The Jackal cocked his head. That Edarin was familiar. The Jackal made to raise his voice and call out, but in the way that forest shadows twist in the moonlight, the Edarin shifted, and a great many things happened at once. First, two knives appeared, one each in Reshian and Ibarra's chests. Second, the Jackal realized that the Edarin was much closer than he had been before, and closing fast at a full sprint. Third, both Morkel and Dana started turning away, convinced that the Edarin was no threat. "Wall!" the Jackal barked in Uveran, eyes igniting and reaching for the scimitar slung across his back. His muscles were moving with growing speed as a whipping sandstorm of power rushed through his veins, and he prepared for battle. Dago and Fede, unlike their now-dead brothers, were quick on the draw and stepped up, sending surging stone up to head height between them and the Edarin. Reshin and Ibarra were still gasping in shock, staggering back and grabbing at the knives in their chest, but the Jackal had put them from his mind. They were dead, they just hadn't realized it yet. Nico and Bolas had already ignited as the walls went up, torching the air above them in case the Edarin felt particularly bold, and with defense handled, the Jackal went on attack. Power pouring into his muscles, the Jackal spun out from behind the wall, scimitar carving out in a wicked arc to cleave hips from torso if the Edarin had tried to weave around the wall. But just as he did, the stone wall exploded inward. The Edarin had decided to simply go through the dirt and stone, and as the Jackal's arc carried him neatly into the remnants of the wall, the Edarin burst forward, lashing with twin knives across the throats of Morkel and Dana, who were still only 3/4 turned away from him. They hadn't even had time to ignite their gifts, and they too fell as the Edarin continued with lightning-quick steps towards Nico and Bolas, whose twin streams of fire were still aimed above their heads. The Edarin picked them up with upward strikes under the ribcage, straight into the heart, killing them both instantly and carrying on in 2 steps to hurl them towards the Wave Runner, one with each hand. The Jackal's eyes grew wide. Grown men thrown spilling across the wharf like punctured water skins, and by an Edarin, no less. With every ounce of speed he could muster, the Jackal reversed his original strike, turning and hurling the scimitar like a disc of death towards the Edarin. He didn't really expect it to hit, and it did not. The Edarin had already rolled to the ground and surged back up on all 4s, like a rabid dog chasing its target. The Jackal began to back away as quickly as his enhanced speed would allow him, trying to process the Edarin as he moved. Columns of earth erupted from the ground as Dago and Fede tried to kill him, but it was like watching a steer try to stomp out a spider. With sick fascination, the Jackal watched from increasing distance as the Edarin flowed to Dago, doubling him over with a punch to the gut, then jumped to the man's shoulders, flipping and twisting towards Fede, knives held ready. The last thing Fede saw before he died was his Earth Spire, which had been aimed for the Edarin, but now pierced his brother Dago's chest. And then the Edarin hit him full on, and he was dead before they both hit the ground. But the death of his men had bought the Jackal some time. He was still backing away, and as he slammed up against the wall, he reached down along his sleeve for his kill switch. He was able to get out most of the word, "Stop!" before the Edarin slammed him through the chest with a shoulder tackle, driving him upward, knocking out the better part of his breath, and pinning him into the walls of the wharf. Several ribs broke, but as the Edarin ripped him off the wall, wrenching his arms behind his back so hard that both his shoulders dislocated, the Jackal began to laugh. He kept laughing, well, half laughing and half hissing from the excruciating pain, as the Edarin smeared him up to face the Sestrans, who were only now lunging onto the wharf to fight. They shouted as they rose, but they met only the eyes of the Edarin and the cackling Jackal that was held between them like a human shield. Each of the cestrants began to shine with blue light, and from behind them streams of water rose into the air from the sea, but at a shouted word from the Jackal they held in place. It was partially because the Edarin had twisted his already damaged shoulders and held the Jackal between them, and partially because the Jackal had a plan. On a second gasped word from the Jackal, the men let their whirling water whips fall to the ground and stepped no closer. The Edarin twisted the Jackal's shoulders again, speaking for the first time. "Wise move," the Edarin said. "They might even live now." The Jackal chuckled at the Edarin's choice of words, getting his arms twisted even further out of their sockets for the trouble. "Oh, what's so funny?" the Edarin said evenly. "You have no idea how right you are," the Jackal said. "Another step forward and we'd likely all be dead in moments." "How do you figure?" the Edarin asked. 8 is bigger than 3, and 8 was clearly no problem for me." "Of course," the Jackal said. "But I wasn't talking about a fight. I know when I'm outmatched." "Then enlighten me on how I'd be dead." "With the remaining strength in my left hand, and believe me, it is fading fast. I am holding the safety on my kill switch. If they step forward, you would kill me. I lose my grip, and we all vanish, thanks to the dozen or so pounds of explosive wrapped around my chest." "You're bluffing," the Edarin said. "Am I?" Jackal asked. "Feel free to examine, though carefully. The mechanism is not delicate, but fortune knows what you did in our little scuffle." The Edarin stood and lifted the Jackal by both arms, knee probing the lumps encircling the Jackal's back as the Jackal hissed in pain. Left alone, the Jackal's tendency for healing meant that his muscles and even bone might slowly form back together and regenerate. But that wouldn't happen when they were constantly being twisted and retorn over and over again like this. "Let's say I believe you. I'm still in control here, and you're gonna tell me everything that you know about the Machine King." The Jackal laughed, and the Edarin twisted harder, drawing a scream of pain. "You remind me of a rat I hunted. He liked to laugh a lot too." "Ah, so it truly is you. You've heard of me?" "But of course. I didn't believe you were real. What, an Edarin capable of what you've done?" "But no matter how we tortured the rats' men, they all told the same story. And your prowess here, well, that only confirms that, unfortunately, we killed Rat and all his men in vain." The Edarin twisted the Jackal. "Stop stalling. Where is the Machine King?" "I'm afraid anything related to my employer is off limits," the Jackal said. "You see, if I don't tell you, we both die, and rather quickly. But if I do tell you, then I will die very slowly and painfully, while you go free. You see how that's not fair." "You underestimate how much damage I can do from here," the Edarin growled, twisting the Jackal's shoulders again. They were at their limit. Any further and they might begin to actually tear out of their sockets, and the Jackal had never tried to regrow a limb. I do not underestimate your strength, but you have no idea about the creativity of the Machine King. You also overestimate my remaining grip strength, keeping us both alive." The Edarin growled in frustration. Believe me, I am not interested in dying here either. I know little of your motives other than what I extracted from Rat's men. Righteous vengeance, a quest to kill the Machine King, is all that right? I assumed that means you can let me go with only 2 destroyed arms, which I may never use again. It's a lesser evil, though I imagine you'd hunt me all the same. Which arm of yours is holding the kill switch? So I can be a little gentler. I imagine you'd tear the other one off, the Jackal said, so I will not tell you. I was actually kind of hoping you were going to say that. The Edarin giggled himself and then systematically broke both of the Jackal's knees. First one, then the other. The Jackal's screams echoed out into the wharf, sending all of the Sestrans into combat mode again, and it was only another scream from the Jackal then that they didn't all die. You idiot! Oh, fuck, you idiot! You could have killed all of us! The Jackal spluttered. The Edarin set him down, bending him back on his shattered, hanging knees. The Jackal screamed again, unleashing vitriol in every language he knew, but the Edarin had grabbed him by both wrists and now leaned into the Jackal's ears. You're gonna answer one question, and then I'll let you go. What do you have on the commander? How have you forced him to work with you? Despite the screaming pain and his utter hatred for the man who had caused it, the Jackal let out a forceful laugh and poured every drop of fury into what he had to say. Forced him? You oozing gutter slug. You think we had to force him? He is a greedy, maggot-infested wretch to the core. A few words and the chance to control Alreen, and he was thrilled. I'll tell him what you did, the Edarin said. When news of the attacks you orchestrated is confirmed, the Edarins will turn on you in an instant. And what makes you think that the news hasn't arrived? Why do you think they don't already know? Your noble beliefs are interesting, Edarin, like a strange, pointless artifact, but that was all the Jackal got out before he was lifted, first upward into the air, and then swung around like a bag on a string, and then suddenly he was tumbling through the air towards his men. A great deal happened beneath him as he fell. Another knife flew through the air, but the Sestrans were ready to block it this time, and the Edarin flickered back into the shadows, racing away from water bullets and out into the night. But by damn it, the Jackal held onto his grip, even as he crashed to the ground in a broken heap, all of his remaining gifted energy forced into the fingers wrapped around the kill switch, gasping instructions until his men had moved to disarm it. Then, fearing mostly for what the Machine King might do to him, and as a distant second, wondering whether he might ever regain the use of any of his limbs, he slipped from consciousness. Meridia. When Meridia woke that morning, long before the sun rose, she stole down to her office, but as she lifted the stacks and sheets of papers that had been left behind, something was different. In the days before, the false wolf had followed her instructions to the T. Copies of the manifests and ledgers had been placed carefully in unassuming stacks of papers and notes, which she had allowed to grow unruly in case the commander's men came snooping. But today, he had just left a hand-scribbled note. Machine King knows we're hunting. High Commander working with Krona. Your operation, but the traitor dies. Leave signal to meet. Want to know what happens next? Join us on Patreon to become a hero of Edera and get early access to episodes along with bonus features, director's commentary, and the full tab to archive. You can also find other ways to support us at the links in the description, and we will see you next week.